I've seen some motorized snowboards in the past that didn't look that fun or didn't look like they had enough power or traction to be fun. And in this video I'm going to be trying to produce a 125cc two-stroke dirt bike engine powered snow track snowboard where I'll take that engine out of here and create a mount for it and everything on this board and mechanize all the throttle and controls and everything, and hopefully drive these tracks and see how that goes. There we go. Now, should be free now, hopefully, to pull this motor out. It is just a little 125, so you would think, yeah, slip right out. So these are these snow tracks that I got on the internet for pretty cheap, but I'll be using the axle it comes with. I put that on the lathe and try to shorten it. So the shaft that's in the back has a spline on each end, and I don't really want to mess with those, so I'll probably cut it down the middle and weld it back together to get the end length, and I'll probably do that on the lathe so that I can control the run out while I'm doing it once I put it back together. Mark sort of how far they sit out on each of these. And we're gonna have to fit a sprocket, and this might make first gear kind of like reasonable starting. I've got the welder set to about 200 amps, so we'll see. Yeah, I got the little 125 engine hung up and I'm working on these motor mounts. And right now I've just got these spaced out here, and the engine can really slide, so make a little tube on the lathe or something to space that properly, and then I'm going to start working on the other mounts. But this way slid all the way up against, maybe I'll need like a washer or a small spacer. There's a pretty good alignment between the two sprockets, so that's sort of the starting point, and then we'll work those other mounts as we go. I'm sort of right in between reasonable chain lengths, and I would just put a tensioner on the backside here on this chain, but I'm figuring I'm going to use this for some engine braking as well, so I think I'm going to just this little nub here from the engine is what's interfering on that mount, so I'm going to try to cut that out and see if that rotation brings that chain a hair closer so I can get it done without a tensioner. So I welded on some motor mounts for 3 of the different mounts on this engine, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and install it, and then we'll work on getting the board installed. I made this base plate and welded a couple of tabs onto it, and then we can take the entire motor assembly, get it up here. It's kind of heavy, and it'll sit right on top of those tabs, and then I can mount the plates that are holding these tracks together to these. So each of these side plates will secure each of these two. And luckily there's these little bends on the side plates of the tracks. So this whole thing pretty much drops right there, fits up. I've got this bottom plate mounted on here, so now I basically need to figure out a way to mount the snowboard itself to this, as well as probably add some more structure down to the board, because this itself could, in some sort of bad event, bend right here or something. Okay, so the board is attached to the tracks and the engine now. Certainly too flimsy right here. I'm definitely going to add some bracing. Back binding is going to now mount to this aluminum block. that portion will be done, then I'll need to go ahead and add a fuel tank and the radiator. And unless I put the fuel tank above the carb, I'm gonna have to maybe use some kind of fuel pump mount for some of these electronics, cables for throttle and clutch. But I'm only gonna have 2 hands, so I think the shifting is sort of gonna be what it is. I went ahead and added this L channel, and then I added this brace, and now the board is really rigid to the back. So we have this long plate going all the way. We have an L bracket that's stiffening that axis, that plate, and then we have this brace coming down from one of the motor mounts. I've got the board all mounted up. I've kind of mocked up the exhaust and made some modifications to this little 50cc pipe and been messing with that. Now I'm starting to work on what it's gonna be like to mount a fuel tank up here. Finished welding this little fuel tank, filled it up with water just to make sure if there were any leaks I could catch them. Welds aren't perfect. I also have this cap that threads onto the bung, and I took this little check valve to allow air to replace the fuel that drains out, and it was something I had, and I took one side of the barb and actually just tapped it to a thread, put a little O-ring on there, and then that threads into the cap that I tapped. I'll let air go in, but it won't let, fuel, or in this case, water. Nothing's gonna come out. And the whole thing seems pretty sealed. And so now I'll get all this water out, dry it out, and then I'll work on welding it up. And mount up these brackets. Then once you have them in place, I just tap the plate behind them. So what we're gonna do is basically bring this in, and with it in position, I can weld it up. Now I got this welded up, I actually ended up mounting the fuel pump down here instead of off of here, which I think will be nice because it's a nice clean movement from the outlet of fuel pump to the filter and then to the carbs. And then we'll see, this thing supposedly can make like 6 PSI at 12 volts. If I have a little battery on here that runs at a lower voltage, I'm hoping it'll make less pressure and it won't overdo the little float valve in the carb. So I'm just trying to keep the bowl filled with that pump, but this pump's capable of putting out way too much flow and pressure, but it's just something I had, so I'm gonna try to work with it. The cooling system doesn't really have a pressure relief in the cap like a normal radiator does, because I'm just using this little heat exchanger as a radiator. So I took a fitting and I machined a poppet out of some metal that I had on the lathe, and I inserted that with a spring and sealed it with this little O-ring inside of another fitting, and that's going to act as a pressure relief valve. So as the coolant in the cooling system expands, if it needs somewhere to go, it can relieve out of here rather than blowing something up. I 3D printed this housing overnight last night, so I think I'm going to mount this up right here, and that gives it good access for grounding this little transformer thing, and for this coil, grounding this coil, and the spark plug reaches up to the top of the head. So I think it's a good spot. I'm going to mount it up. Alright, so I've got her fully assembled. I've got coolant filled up in here. I've got fuel in it. I got this little radiator in the back here, plumbed up. And I've got this air one-way check valve going in to let air in. I was originally running this fuel pump down here just straight into the carb and hoping that the float valve would be able to stop it, and just when I'm not using fuel, just basically deadhead that pump, but it was, I think it was overpressuring it, and I was just bleeding fuel out of the line. So instead I ran it to this T, which is at a high point, which is above the carb. And so I'll definitely get fuel up here going straight back into the tank, and whatever the actual carb needs will just draw out of this point on the T. Put that relief valve in the coolant system, got my electronics mounted up, a little silicone in there, and then I put in some controls. This is the clutch, just normal little bar end here, just for running the clutch. And then throttle, I would use my right hand, but similarly, just a little bike cable running there. And I do have the kill switch functioning here. And then whenever I want to like change gears, I'm just gonna sketchily reach back and, you know, shift up or down. Okay, so I'm gonna do a test start. I should be able to just start it up.
Oh, that sounds diesel, you think? Is that what it's saying?
I don't know. Are dirt bikes diesel? I wonder if anybody's been skiing today.
So I finished that first test with it in the snow, and I want to try it in a few other things and take it back up into the snow and do some more testing. But if you have any ideas, leave it in the comments. Maybe I could try taking it pond skimming, see how fast I could plane across the water, or, you know, see if I just fall as soon as I hit the water. But I only got it to like third or fourth gear, so it definitely has a lot more speed that it can do. I probably went like 20, 25 in the snow, but yeah, it still functions great, nothing overheated, everything seems to be running fine, so I'm eager to try some other stuff with it. Leave them in the comments if you have any ideas.